Far in a remote area, a heavy Russian military train moved across the tracks, carrying fuel, armored equipment, and ammunition, unaware that miles above, almost invisible to the human eye, a dozen small armed Ukrainian drones have already locked on. Ukrainian commanders knew that all it would take to choke the entire sector of the Russian offensive was a successfully orchestrated strike. But there was a problem. The train was moving, and to perfectly hit a moving train with that amount of cargo required precision, coordination, and luck. This wasn't going to be simple. Here's the full story of how Ukrainian drones pulled the most calculated strike on a Russian military train. Ukrainian intelligence had been secretly monitoring a Russian railway line in Zaporizhia for weeks. Satellite images showed the pattern. Thermal signatures indicated increasing activity, and scout reports confirmed that Russia has been moving ammunition to a frontline unit. This information was all they needed to strike. So on one afternoon, the Ukrainian military launched 12 drones into the air to intercept the next Russian weapon cargo on the move. Now, this wasn't just any assault. It would take mad skills and a well-coordinated strategy to successfully neutralize a moving military train. Ukraine knew this, and that was why they made use of drones for the strike. And several nights before the attack day, they had deployed long-range reconnaissance drones. These drones were small, silent, and very difficult to detect on radar, especially at night. They didn't carry any explosives or weapons. Their mission was quite simple: tracking enemy patterns, the direction the train came from, when they slowed, where they stopped to refuel, and a possible window when the train was most vulnerable. Everything was ready, and now it was time for some action. At 1:47 p.m. local time, a dozen Ukrainian drones raced at 97 kilometers per hour towards a Russian ammunition train. Everything already felt tense, but here's the crazy twist. The drone pilots guiding the drones didn't know that their location had been spotted by the Russian artillery. Before they could say jack, the first 152mm shell slammed into the ground about 800 meters away, close enough to shake dust hard from the ceiling and make everyone flinch. However, the Russians didn't magically guess their location. You could say it was an oversight on the Ukrainian side. The moment all 48 drone motors powered up at once, the electromagnetic spike lit up every sensor within 10 kilometers. It was like flipping on stadium lights in the middle of the night. Now the Ukrainian drone pilots had a decision to make: pull back and survive, or push forward under fire. The drones needed about 12 minutes to reach the train, and the Russian artillery needed maybe 3 minutes to find them. That wasn't exactly comforting math, but they chose to keep going. Not long after, a Russian BTR spotted the drone swarm and started to open fire. The formation reacted instantly. 4 drones climbed, 4 dropped low, and 4 pushed straight ahead. The machine gun rounds sliced through empty space, missing by inches. Now here comes the part the Russians could never have predicted. Each drone trailed a fiber optic cable that was thinner than a fishing line. The Russian jammers flooded every radio frequency with 10 kilowatts of interference, but these cables are completely untouched. They carried data at the speed of light, and no amount of jamming could stop them. The drones were on their way, but the Russian artillery had locked onto the Ukrainian drone pilot's exact location and started firing in the area. Surprisingly, the Ukrainians had planned for this exact moment. They had placed themselves in 3 separate bunkers, each one 500 meters apart from the other. But why that distance? A 152mm artillery shell is deadly within 300 meters, but at 500 meters apart, even a direct hit on one bunker wouldn't harm the others. Talk about mad strategy and calculation. So the Russians could destroy 1 bunker or 2 if luck suddenly became their best friend, but destroying all 3? That wasn't happening. The second artillery round hit 600 meters away, although closer but not on target. Regardless of whatever happened, at least 8 drones would survive long enough to complete the mission. Inside the lead drone's camera feed, the operator could see the target clearly. Thick black diesel smoke rose from the train as it ran straight for 2 kilometers across open land, far away from any defensive positions nearby, no cover, and nothing close enough to protect it. That was already an advantage for the Ukrainians. Before this attack, the Ukrainians had studied that route for weeks, confirming this vulnerable window would last for exactly 97 seconds. By this time, the third artillery round hit 450 meters away. Then this one changed everything. The third shell had barely stopped echoing when everything went from bad to worse. Sharp metals tore through the air like angry bees. causing 3 drones to lose their lifeline. Their thin fiber optic cables snapped immediately, which meant they had to switch to radio control, basically making them visible, vulnerable, and at the mercy of Russian jamming. The remaining drones were still safe, as their cables kept sending light-speed signals straight to the Ukrainian drone pilots, making it impossible to jam no matter how much the Russians blasted into the sky. Inside the first bunker, the drone pilots didn't hesitate at all. They grabbed their gear and sprinted into a connecting tunnel before the next shell landed almost on their doorstep. By the time the ground shook again, they were already disappearing into a secondary bunker more than half a kilometer away. At this point, the Russians now had to reacquire their position, and that delay was priceless. But the 3 drones running on radio backup weren't as lucky. The moment a Russian R-330Z H-Zetel electronic warfare vehicle spotted them, the airwaves lit up with so many jamming waves that all 3 drones went completely dark. Meanwhile, the Russian train they were hunting began to speed up, pushing to 48 kilometers per hour, then 52, then pushing to 56 kilometers per hour. For a 4,000-ton beast, that meant it was basically sprinting. But the faster the train went, the farther down the tracks the drones had to meet it, which meant the Ukrainian team had to keep adjusting their calculations in real time. And every tiny change drained more power from the drones' batteries. As the remaining drones got closer, they swerved and twisted. A Russian air defense vehicle called a Panzer S-1 air defense system opened fire from kilometers away. Instead of aiming at each drone, it blasted the sky with exploding shells and turned the air into a wall of shrapnel. The Panzer's twin two A-38M autocannons opened fire at 3,200 meters. Drone 6 went up in flames in a burst of light, then followed by Drone 11. The others scattered right away. Some climbed higher, some dropped low and skimmed the ground. One zigzagged straight through the middle like it had nothing to lose. This confused the gunner. His system was built to shoot down aircraft and cruise missiles, not tiny, chaotic drones. He had seconds to choose who to shoot at. His computer indicated to shoot the high ones. His instincts screamed at him to hit what was closest. But he chose the high group and repeated the exact mistake another crew had made weeks earlier. By the time he corrected, the low-flying drones had slipped through his firing angle. Then more fire came from a nearby Russian outpost, 40 rifles blazing furiously. But the drones were skimming across the tracks, using the train itself as cover. Here's where things get tricky. To successfully land a shot at the drones, the Russian soldiers would have to shoot straight through their own train. All of a sudden, Drone 3's battery died at 100 meters from the target. But momentum kept it gliding forward. The operator had planned for this. The drone didn't need power anymore, as physics would finish the job. Big kudos to the Ukrainian brilliant teamwork and calculation. The Panzer tried to keep firing, but after nearly a minute of non-stop shooting, its barrels overheated and had to cool. That turned out to be a very big mistake because that tiny 12-second pause opened a clean path in the sky. 7 drones shot forward, completely unobstructed. The train engineer saw them coming. 7 small black dots growing fast as they flew towards him. He slammed the throttle so hard he pushed past all the safety limits. But speeding up made the wheels slip on the track, and the train actually slowed down instead of speeding up. The Panzer tried one last blast of fire, but the drones had already dropped too low, so the cannons physically couldn't aim at them. The Russian troops at the last checkpoint fired everything they had: machine guns, rifles, even desperate RPG shots. But none of it mattered by now. The drones were locked onto the center of the train's path, shielded perfectly by its massive body. However, Drone 9 was hit and crashed into a wheat field, leaving 6 drones left, and all the Ukrainians needed was 4 hits to call this a success. And here comes the action. At 13:59, the lead drone impact hit the coupling between the locomotive and the first wagon. The warhead, an RPG-7 charge, punched through the steel instantly, and that one big hit broke the entire train apart. 4 more drones followed suit, hitting direct weak points on the train. The fuel lines burst, brake systems locked instantly, and the ammunition cars went up in flames. And then Wagon 22, the worst one, exploded from inside. The temperature hit its tipping point and the entire load detonated. What happened next wasn't just an explosion, it wiped everything clean. A massive cloud of smoke filled the air as several wagons were blown to pieces. In about 4 seconds, a handful of modified racing drones worth less than $5,000 wiped out over $100 million of Russian assets and also cut off the only supply route feeding 3 mechanized divisions. Mission complete. When morning came, The level of destruction was the talk of Russian social media, even before the state media could censor it. For Ukraine, this wasn't just about blowing up the supply line, but to show that they didn't need $1 billion weaponry to land a perfect attack. One operator reportedly said, "Every supply we stop saves a Ukrainian life." And no matter how Russia adapts to their strategy, so would Ukraine. One question is this: if this is what Ukraine can pull off now, imagine what they're planning next.